Hello, my name is Stephen Jones, and this is my discussion board regarding Bruce Shelley's Chapter 39, Destiny of a Nation. The chapter details the tale of the development of Christianity, sort of post-Revolutionary War, with the end of the Revolutionary War. Americans began to spill over the Appalachian Mountains and began to, as Bruce Shelley described it, it's like everything just sort of tilted towards the Pacific Ocean, and everything started running across the nation and filling it up. The manifest destiny idea, and with that came this idea of making America a Christian nation and trying to figure out what it would entail. He talked about this movement to try and not just tame the West regarding the land, but to tame the West with the people as well. It was full of violent, robust frontiersmen who were fighting at the drop of a hat, and uncultured and uncivilized and definitely unchristian. And so you get the beginnings of a revivalist movement as people sat to try to stir up and train a Christian sentiment and equip people with the knowledge they needed to live good Christian lives. And so you had the emergence of the Second Great Awakening in 1790, and which specifically fed on and perpetuated this notion of revivalism, with its strong appeal to emotion, with its vivid descriptions of heaven and hell, and these threatening fears of damnation and promises of glory. It was a very simple, and maybe some would say simplistic, approach to Christianity, and very emotionally driven to spawn a immediate response. These things were sometimes shunned by denominations, and so they sometimes are called tent meetings because people are meeting outside and are in groups. Something that we'll talk about in a second, that it seems to hold, still have a foothold in American Christianity. Along with that, he talks about the sort of the stain in the 19th century was slavery and American dealing with it. It was the curse that came in with this. It was one of those marks that always looks bad on American Christians, all Christians, as they seek to justify their own sinful behavior and the cultures they were born in by looking for biblical justification to do so. One of the things I always take solace in is Christians eventually, understand and become self-reflective enough to see the sin in their own midst and find ways of purging it from it, and being not just sometimes the perpetuators of the crimes like in slavery, specifically in the American South, but also the conduits of change as well. I appreciated what Shelley said about the use of the voluntary society to Christianize the nation, and specifically to work towards abolition and things like that. Another thing he talked about is American Christianity regarding the development of Christianity among formerly enslaved peoples, and the use of their themes regarding Christianity as a form of exodus, and specifically the tales of wandering in the wilderness and going into the promised land. One thing I wish he overstated, and perhaps to make his case regarding the evils of slavery, when he talked about how most slaves accepted Christianity mostly out of necessity because they'd been stripped of their foreign gods. I don't believe enslaved people were treated honestly or appropriately or fairly, but I also don't want to believe that I also want to believe that Christianity has some explanatory power, and that people believe not just out of compulsion or necessity, but they actually believed it. One of the great lies I think that was perpetuated in the 20th century was that Christianity is the white man's religion, when the truth is it was in Africa long before it was ever in Europe. And then finally he ends with the three big culture shocks of Darwinism, which attacked the people's interpretation of the Bible. Could God be the creator, or is it blind chance? The industrialization and immigration of people into America, which brought differing perspectives on what Christianity is and how it was approached. And then finally the higher criticism itself, which was a direct assault on the believability of Christians. So by the end of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th, to be a learned Christian was to believe that the European view that the Bible wasn't really written by the people who said it was, and to take an almost supernatural approach. So much we could say about the legacy of all these things, but you can hopefully see its perpetuation in our culture of still a strong revivalism in our worship, the idea that this world is not my home, I'm just a passing through from from former enslaved people's spirituals still perpetuates in the way a lot of us view our hope as Christians. And what's maybe the saddest is how even in American seminaries, institutions that are supposed to be focused on training pastors, most seminary professors think the highest form of education and discourse is to talk about these sacred texts, the Word of God, in ways that are acceptable according to people who don't even believe it. So there's my summary of